Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a dark comedy from Denmark, Danish language English subs, released in the year 2020, directed by Anders Thomas Jensen, and this film is called Riders of Justice. So Riders of Justice is about this horrible train accident that results in the death of a mother. Now the mother was travelling with a teenage daughter, she survived, and so the mother actually passed away, leaving behind a husband who's serving in Afghanistan. So there's also a mathematician who was travelling on this train, and he has a lot of guilt because he actually gave his seat up to the mother, and he believes if he didn't do that, he would have been the one that died and she would have survived. And so he believes it's his obligation to actually see how this teenage daughter is. And so when the military man in Afghanistan realises the tragedy, he comes back home to Denmark in order to care for the teenage daughter, but he's having a lot of trouble dealing with his own grief because he's a very violent man, he's a very cold man, and things are going from bad to worse. But then one night, things are going to become even more complicated when the mathematician, along with some of his tech-heavy friends, knock on the door and make the startling revelation that this was not an accident. In fact, it was a targeted attack against a witness who was going to testify against the head of a bikie gang. So this infuriates this military man to the point where he wants revenge against this bikie gang, and he's going to dish out his own sense of justice in a very bloody way. But unfortunately, revenge is never that easy, and things are going to become very complex. So what those complications are, something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Riders of Justice. I was very, very excited for three reasons coming into this movie. Number one, it's a dark comedy, and no one does dark comedy better than Scandinavia. Number two, Anders Thomas Jensen was the director. Now he's absolutely brilliant in everything he does, and I think the reason is because he's not a very prolific director, so he has a lot of time and attention to each and every piece that he creates. And I've loved every other movie that he's made. Adam's Apples, Green Butchers, Men in Chicken, Flickering Lights. They were movies that I thought were absolutely fantastic. They were very different to each other, but they had the same trademark that Anders Thomas Jensen is. Incredibly funny films, but very deep and humanely touching movies at the same time. So every movie has a specific reason for existing, and it's each different from the other. And so coming into Riders of Justice, I was also hoping that that was going to be the case. And you've also got Nicolas Lecaus and Mads Mikkelsen teaming up with Anders Thomas Jensen, who have been in every other one of his movies. And they've got absolutely fantastic comedy. And also has Nicholas Bro and Lars Brigman. So I was very excited to see how these actors were going to team up with Anders Thomas Jensen, and I was praying to God that Riders of Justice would not be a letdown, and I was so relieved to see that Riders of Justice was not a letdown, and yet another fine example of how good Anders Thomas Jensen is. This is an incredibly touching movie. It's a very sad movie, a very devastatingly powerful film, but at the same time a very funny movie, but it never loses its sense of tone. So it's always juggling that act very finely, and so no one ever does it better than Anders Thomas Jensen. Each and every one of his other movies has really dark subject matters that make you feel really grounded, but at the same time characters that make you laugh. And so they're otherworldly characters set in a world that is bounded by grief. And this movie is about coping with grief. It's a movie about chance. Does things happen for a reason, or is it just outright bad luck? And the act of revenge, and how powerful that act of revenge can backfire upon you. So there are sudden realizations in this movie where you actually think to yourself, oh no, did that just happen? And so there are moments that just hit you with a sledgehammer out of nowhere, and this is where the powerful emotion really intensifies itself in a way where you're actually watching a genuine dark comedy. The script was absolutely phenomenal. I love the characters, and this is down also to the fact that the actors play such incredible roles. Mads Mikkelsen, yet again, he is an absolute standout. You've also got Nicolas Lecaus, who teams up with him very well. And Lars Brigman's character was absolutely fantastic, and same with Nicholas Bro. Nicholas Bro and Lars Brigman's characters were definitely the comedy element. They were the comedy alleviation for the really serious tones that the film had. But they all work so well off each other. And so they want this quest for revenge, but they don't know exactly what that revenge is. And this is where that power of grief is coming into it. Grief is really clouding their judgment. And when you realise what they've done, they've passed the point of no return. And you just feel sad for the whole situation, because it's basically a set of tragedies that are just mounting on top of each other. And so it's a really powerful film, but at the same time a strangely enlightening film. It's a beautiful movie. And so you got moments that I thought made me laugh out loud. I absolutely loved it, but as I said, the tone is always very consistent. It never outweighs one particular element that the movie wants. It's never too dark for you not to enjoy the comedy, and it's never too funny to really appreciate the really serious moments that the movie has. There is violence in this film that plays a very key role. It's very dark and very brutal violence, but it's not overdone, so it uses it very well. It's a very precise way that Anders Thomas Jensen uses the elements in this movie to create something that was very serious but at the same time very funny. So you're never laughing at the aspects. The laughter is to alleviate that pressure that the movie builds so well that it's not leaving you down in the dumps. There is a strange sense of uplifting quality by the time the film finishes that I actually felt worked really well. And so it's a very hard thing to do, dark comedy perfectly, but I believe Anders Thomas Jensen, it's really his forte. It's definitely something he's very comfortable in, and just the way this movie is produced, just a clear indication of how good he is. So the cinematography, it's a very dark film, and the dark movie really matched the overall dark qualities that these characters had. The characters are very much larger than life. They're very three-dimensional, and I loved each and every one of them. The chemistry was brilliant, and you've also got that side of the enemy, but you're never quite sure who the enemy is. And so is the enemy, in fact, the people that they deem responsible? Or is the enemy the grief that they're feeling? So if you don't come to terms with your problems, unfortunately, these problems can magnify. So I thought the soundtrack was fantastic. And so everything about Riders of Justice, it just really pleased me to see that this is another movie that Anders Thomas Jensen really struck a home run with. I thought the ending left me thinking about life. So it's a very thought-provoking movie. But as I said, there's different elements to this film. There's different layers. On one side, you've got a very humanely touching drama. And on the other side, you've got a very violent movie with some shootouts. And on the other side, you've got a really funny movie that alleviates all those pressures that the movie brings. So it's never taking itself too seriously, but it's serious enough to actually strike home the message that it's trying to deliver. So if you like Anders Thomas Jensen and you like Scandinavian dark comedies, this movie is an absolute must, and it's no surprise that yet again I'm going to give Riders of Justice 5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.